Good evening, and welcome to the Rush. Welcome to the Rush, all of you who are looking at us internationally, in the region, and right here in Guyana. My name is Randolph Critchlow. I want to say thank you very much to those persons who are joining us all over the world. And here in Guyana, it is Friday. It is Friday, the 1st of October, and we thank you very much for being a part of the program as we continue to bring you credible and valid information here on APNU AFC TV. Of course, we like to do things right. We're going to give you an opportunity to share the live stream. We're going to give you an opportunity to invite your friends into the rush this evening as we have a lot to talk about. Crime is on the increase, folks. Crime is spiking in this country, and I'll go through for you in a little later in the program. All of what is happening with the crime situation in Guyana, out of control, folks. Just as crime is on the rise, cost of living is out of control. We're going to talk about that in our financial economic segment this evening with Mr. Elson Lowe, as usual, our economic contributor here on the program. But folks, we like to do it first. Let's unpack.
One time for the bass, alright. Back in the day we used to live Charlotte Street. Just learn to walk and speak. Me woulda grab a bucket, 2 stick of milk in and gone in the yard and beat. Miss Paul used to suck up she teeth. We didn't kick out the music sweet. You couldn't hear me little voice in Regent Street, but I'm still in the game. On the stage I'm keeping the flame. Used to jump with Leon and Shane. We used to make enough nights in the neighborhood. Get vexed and call over Dwayne. Tell them music run in me vein. Yesterday.
Thank you very much for staying tuned, folks, and welcome back. Welcome back as we shared a few locations. I'm going to give you a shout out just now. Let us know where you're joining us from. Let us know where you're joining us from this evening. We're going to give you a shout out in just a few. We have so many things to unpack, folks. So many things to unpack this evening. It is Friday, the 1st of October 2020. Let me share a few more places so that we have all that we need, folks. Just sharing on a few more places before we get the ball rolling. We ask you to do the same. We ask you to do the same for us right now. Share the live stream. Share the live stream. Share it in your WhatsApp group, your Facebook groups, your Facebook pages. Let everyone know that the credible and valid information is about to be unpacked, folks. I'm going to be sharing a few more places, and we get right to the issues of the day. But before we get to the issues of the day, we have to say a big shout out to all the people looking at us from all over the world, and we're going to get to you in just a moment as we share a few more places. As we share, a bit of housekeeping we have to do before we get started, folks. A bit of housekeeping. That's all we need to do, and then we're going to get right into it. Yes. So I think we've shared. We hope that you are doing the same. But folks, let's see where you're joining us from this evening. NYC, good evening to you. Good evening, New Jersey. Good evening. Virginia is in the house. Virginia's in the house. Isla Penitent, thank you very much for tuning in. Good evening to all of you. Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, Toronto. Right. Elson is going to be on later. See, people are already saying good evening to Elson. Yes, good night to all of the usual viewers and listeners to the Rush. We are ready. Festival City. When I think Festival City, I'm remembering that young man that was shot. Hope everything is good over there in Festival City. To my folks right here in Georgetown, we have to stay safe. I'm going to show you some videos just now about what really is happening in this country. Folks, good evening. Let me see. New Amsterdam, then Amstel. Thank you very much for tuning in. New Jersey. Did I say 2020? I think I said 2021, man. Maybe, well, if I did say 2020, my apologies to those persons who are looking. It's the 1st of October, 2021. Thank you very much for correcting me. Brooklyn is in the house. Bartica. Welcome, New York. Then I'm still again. Atlanta, Georgia, Delaware, London, Holland, West Side. The West Side. Thank you very much for tuning in, folks. Barbados, Haslington, New York. Share the live stream as you come through. Port Kaituma. Our folks up there in PK, region number 1. Tiger Bay locked in. Thank you very much. Number 51, Village Quarantine, Barbies, Guyana. Albert Morgan is saying, let's fight. That's my colleague's slogan. right? We don't fight all of here. We unpack. A little bit of fighting sometimes, but we do mostly unpacking, so you understand the issues at a different level. Trinidad and Tobago, France, Brooklyn, thank you very much for tuning in. Atlanta, Georgia, Belladrum, Long Island is in the house. People from all over the world. Folks, all we ask of you is that you share the live stream, folks. Share the live stream. Mahaika is here. Present. Everybody's in the rush. Everybody's in the rush this evening. Magic City. Is that the bar? You're watching from Magic City Bar? I don't know. You need to clarify. Mahaika, thank you very much for tuning in, visiting from NA, New Amsterdam. Let's unpack. Yes, Miss Thomas. Thank you very much for tuning in to the program, folks. We are unpacking. We are going to be unpacking Horst Stelling. Thank you very much for tuning in. What are we doing about GCOM hiring? Aubrey Alexander wants to know what we're doing about GCOM. We're gonna talk about GCOM. We are going to talk about GCOM and what are some possible things that we can do. At the end of the day, folks, we have to ensure that the hiring process is one that is transparent, that we know exactly how these persons are being hired for these positions. So we'll keep our eyes on that. East New Jersey is in the house. Thank you very much for tuning in. Number 5 Village. Right. Tuning in from London. Quarantine. Alright. Alexander said, let's fight. We're going to fight. We do some fighting. But we mostly do unpacking. Lyndon is in the house. What about the petition? Doreen Clark is asking, what about the petition? I know that sometime this month we are supposed to have that hearing on whether or not the Court of Appeal can hear the case. So we're going to be keeping our eyes on that. It's still going on in the court. Doreen. Watching from New Jersey. Folks, if you're sharing the live stream, we want to say thank you very much for doing that. If you're sharing the live stream, we want to say thank you very much for doing that. Let's continue to share. We'll be having, of course, our economic segment this evening. Essequibo, what is happening up there, Essequibo? Let us know what is happening, Essequibo. All right. Ryan says that no government can stop crime. If AP and UFC come to power, it will continue. I agree with you, Ryan. I agree with you. Right? Nobody's saying that crime will go to zero. But there needs to be a plan articulated to the people of Guyana as to what they're going to do about the escalating crime situation. It seems to the Guyanese people as if it's out of control. What is the plan? Nobody is saying that the crime will go to zero, Ryan. Nobody is saying that. But you need to have some sort of strategic plan, and people need to see you doing something to actually stop the crime. And what they have been doing, if I may add, is denying the fact that there is escalating crime. They've been withholding information and denying the fact that crime is on the increase. That is my problem with the government. We can't fix the crime if we don't acknowledge that there is a problem. We can't fix it. St. Martin is in the house. Welcome, folks. Brooklyn, New York, West Side, Cleveland, Ohio. How are you doing there in Cleveland? All right. Thank you very much, folks, for tuning in. Let's go, folks. Let us go. As I said, we'll be joined by Mr. Elson Alo this evening, as, of course, it's Friday, and what we normally do is talk about economics, talk about your pocket. We want to know how you're doing. Folks, 425 days of this fraudulent administration, and I want to ask you a question in my opening take. Right? I want to ask a question in my opening take this evening. Are you better off? 425 days of this administration. Are you better off? Look around, folks. Ask yourself, after 425 days of this government that promised the world, They promised the world. What have they done in over a year to improve your life? Has your situation improved, or is it stagnant, or has it gotten worse? What has happened in 425 days? Who is better off? Which set of Guyanese are better off after 425 days of this administration? Point me in the direction. Let me see the group of people who can stand honestly and say that their lives are better after 425 days of this administration. Which group? I can tell you the group of people. I don't need to guess. I know with certainty which group of people are better off after 425 days of this administration. Right? Folks, somebody is saying that we're not getting any song, but let me just check and see if we're getting that. Right, so the song is supposed to be there. You need to check your device. Yes, folks, I know who is better off. I don't need to guess. The PPP friends and cronies are doing very well. Remember the APNU AFC spoke about the good life for all, and policies were put in place to ensure that everybody benefits. And the APNU AFC, and I will say this from speaking to people on the ground, that the APNU AFC took a lot of flack and a lot of stick for their holistic approach. Many persons said, look, you ain't taking care of you people. But governance is wider than that. It's about implementing policies that everybody can benefit. And so I am saying, when I look around this country, and this is my opening take, this is something that I wanted to articulate a while now, that it seems as though only a few well-positioned people, well-connected people are benefiting from this government. That is how it seems to me. I don't know what you are observing, but I have seen 425 days of corruption, 425 days of confusion, 425 days of, as somebody said, punishment for a particular set of people. I've seen 425 days of piecemeal, one-off handouts. Nothing that will significantly improve the lives of Guyanese people. Nothing. Ask them to point you in the direction of a program or a policy implemented to improve your life in a tangible manner. You know what they will point you to? Right? They will point you in the direction of cash grants and cash payouts. This cash grant, the cash grant, the cash grant. These little sums of monies that they are giving people all around the country that will be finished one time they step in the supermarket. Folks, ask yourself, ask your neighbor, 425 days of what? Somebody said 425 days of murders, crime, corruption, confusion. That's what we're seeing, folks. That is what we are seeing. Well, let's get into it, folks. If you don't believe me, this evening, I want you to just brush through your newspapers or go online on one of the news agencies. You will see daily the crime situation is out of control. And don't let us start with COVID, folks. Actually, let us start with COVID because that's where I want us to start. That's where I want us to start. Right? Let us start here, folks. These are the latest numbers. We had 228 new COVID-19 cases and 6 additional deaths recorded. These deaths were recorded on the 31st, between the 26th and the 31st of, the 30th of September. These are the numbers, folks. And I want you to notice that among the 6, we had 1 fully vaccinated person. 1 fully vaccinated person. So let us throw out this myth, because the government and their cronies were running around one time saying that fully vaccinated people are not, nobody has died who is fully vaccinated. I have dedicated considerable amount of time on this show to educating persons about the usefulness of the vaccine. I've also dedicated a considerable amount of time on this show advocating for those persons who choose not to be, for them to hold on to their right to choose. I've also spent a considerable amount of time encouraging persons to seek out the information, be educated on the issue, and make a decision, the decision that will protect yourself and your family. And so, folks, I am asking you, and I'm going to take this conversation to a place where this government is afraid to take it. There has not been an acknowledgement at this point in time of the Delta variant in this country. And I want to spend a few minutes letting you understand why it is that this government would drag their feet on confirming whether or not the Delta variant is in Guyana. They shout at the top of their voices about how leaders are encouraging persons to not get vaccinated. A whole lot of hogwash. The APNU AFC from the beginning were encouraging persons to get vaccinated. We went to Linden with Nurse Cummings, the woman who administered COVID shot to the Vice President of the United States of America, and encouraged those nurses in Linden to get vaccinated. It was the PPP administration where their duplicitous, under the table dealings, when they forced Sputnik V on Guyanese, those same Guyanese who now have to go and get another vaccine if they want to travel to the United States of America. When the opposition was saying to the government, you have to come clean with the Guyanese people. When the Trinidadian Prime Minister said, well, I'm not going to take vaccines that are not WHO approved, and highlighted the fact that Guyana, that is exactly what Guyana is doing. They chastise the man, abuse you out. Folks, now we have a situation where there is no confirmation from the Ministry of Health of the Delta variant in Guyana. Folks, the Delta variant is an aggressive strain of this virus with a whole lot more viral load, with the ability to kill people even if they are vaccinated. And for all of the people who are coming into the country, it is very likely that this spike in COVID deaths that we are seeing is a result of the Delta variant right here in Guyana. And you may ask yourself, why is the PPP government not making a bigger deal or not making a stronger push to verify whether or not we have the Delta variant and do something about their lax measures that they have? The answer is simple, folks. The answer is simple. That they have put their business interests and their business friends' interests before the health and safety of Guyanese people. That is exactly it. That is exactly it. When Jamaica found out that they had the Delta variant, they shut down for 7 days. Shut down. They have vaccines, but they're not relying on putting all of their eggs in the vaccine basket. They're rolling out other measures to protect their people. In New Zealand, after they would have been declared COVID-free, they found one new COVID case. They shut down the entire country. The entire country, folks. They shut it down. After they found one COVID case. Right? I'm just letting you know. This government is so concerned with protecting their business friends. They are not even going to consider a shutdown as we spike, as we see a spike in COVID deaths. Even as vaccinated persons are being affected also. So you're throwing all your eggs in this vaccine basket, folks. But the fully vaccinated people are dying also. Because we have an aggressive strain. I am convinced that we have an aggressive strain of this virus in the country. St. Lucia, Jamaica, all of these people have recognized how aggressive this Delta variant is and how devastating it can be. And you have to pair the vaccination efforts with restrictions on movement. If you don't do that, then we are defeating the purpose. Because an unvaccinated person is free to go into the market or jump in a bus and mingle with the vaccinated person. Everybody's walking about everywhere. How are you really dealing with it? Folks, this administration is not serious. And it is sad to say that there seems to be no urgency to figure out whether or not we have the Delta variant or to do anything about it. How are we explaining this spike in deaths? How? Right? Folks, as this is happening, we see efforts to reopen schools. And I want you to take what we're going to be talking about now in context. Secondary schools will be reopened based on individualized programs established by the relative schools as such. Only grade 10, 11, and 12, that's Form 4, 5, and 6, students will return to face-to-face learning during October 2021. Right? It will not be a fixed date for the reopening of all schools since it is being done according to vaccination programs. So as we are seeing this spike in COVID, folks, as we are seeing this spike in COVID, we still see this push to reopen schools for face-to-face learning for secondary school students. And I'm wondering, folks, with over 20-something of the primary schools closed, right? Rupnaran, I got a magic trick for you. Here you go. Enjoy. Right. As we are seeing all of this, what will happen when the secondary schools open? Folks, I really don't know what to say. I really don't. Somebody said, Lord, have mercy. Folks, of course, we continue to see the rise in crime, and I want to talk about a number of things. The young man that was shot in Festival City, I think it's Nutmeg Street Festival City, on his way to work the other day, the police have released surveillance footage of the two bandits on their motorcycle. Folks, if you know, if you recognize this motorcycle, if you recognize the helmet, the shirt this one wearing in front, these are the two that robbed and shot that young man on his way to work the other morning. Folks, if you recognize them, ensure you contact the police station, right? Ensure you contact the police station. As we were saying, folks, crime is on the increase. And it's spiking. It's out of control. Robson Ben would tell you that it's not on the increase. The president, folks, the president, during a press conference, said that crime is not on the, you know, I'm paraphrasing here. He said it's not really on the increase, but awareness is on the increase. So we're more aware of the crime now. That's why it seems like it's on the increase. That is the explanation that the presidents of this country gave us. Alex Alder said that is right now is only God can help us. If you think we are killing when it comes to crime, yes, Joshua Joseph, as we see a spike in COVID, we see a corresponding spike in crime. folks, that was the scene at the Gadzidar gas station in Enmore, folks. East Coast Demerara. And of course, this is not a rarity. This is every day now. This is every day. This is not a rarity. Bandits run in, take what they want, they're shooting people. All manner of things happening. And this government is in a state of denial. A state of denial. It's a wild, wild west. The busman, the man who's driving the bus decided he could drive away with the holes in it because he frightened to get robbed too. The man nearly pulled out the hose from the pump. This is another angle. Another angle. This is the Guyana we live in, folks. This is our country right now. This is our country. And the problem that I have is that crime has always been around. We've always had crime. Whichever government, whichever administration in place, we've had crime. But it must be at a manageable level. There must be some sort of strategic plan as to how we are dealing with this. They don't seem to have any plan. They don't seem to have any plan, folks. As we consider this, before we get to our economic segment, let me just go through some more of the headlines. We can get the video, but I'll go through the headlines to you. Right? Let me go through some of the headlines from recently, today. Let me see if I get it. I want to go through a few other headlines so you understand the crime situation. 60-year-old businessman now counting his losses after he was robbed of an undisclosed sum of cash. Bicycle bandits rob businessman. Another headline today. Driver robbed by bicycle bandits in good fortune. And we can go on. Police launched manhunt for suspect of who shot and killed 19-year-old yesterday. We are living in the wild, wild west, folks. And if you ask the minister now, they will tell you that serious crime is is down. We're working with it. No idea of what they're doing. No idea. This is where we are. This is where we are, folks. Another day. Another day in the West, folks. I want to move on. It's such a sad thing to talk about and continue to, but we have to. We have to, folks. We have to highlight it. Because these were the people, folks. You can talk whatever you want to talk, but these were the people who knew how to govern. They were the saviors of Guyana, apparently. They knew how to govern. For 5 years, they ridiculed. Crime wasn't zero, but the AP and UFC were working to reduce crime. You had a professional police force, right? Had a professional police force. And we're moving. Let me sort this person out. Got you. Got you. Magic trick. Yeah. What do we have now? Wildness, confusion. Folks, as we move on swiftly this evening, I know we have to get going. I just want to play you one more video and let us consider what is happening with the cash grants. That this is a cash grant government, you know. This is a cash grant government. Right? We've said it before. No vision, no long-term plan, no increase in public service, no increase in nurses, no increase in teachers, no plan for the high cost of living, no plan for the crime, no plan for unemployment. All they have is cash grants. Avenue for corruption. Everybody complaining about the cash grants. COVID cash grant corruption. Farmers cash grant corruption. But this is their plan. I want to show you a video as we're talking about the cash grants. Let's listen to what this auntie is saying. Now before we go, these were some farmers collecting their flood relief grant. And apparently these two aunties, they were upset that they weren't getting it. And they made noise. Let's listen in.
Who get glasses and
Go on, tia, ita.
who last get to the nugget? No flood relief money, no vote. Local government election are coming.
No flood relief money, no vote, auntie said. But interestingly, folks,
I'm very happy seeing that all my grandson, myself, and my children will get. Some will get today and some will get when they come back, and I'm very happy about it and thankful for that. I'm very thankful for the members and the group that won. Very happy today, more than yesterday. But whatever done yesterday, don't matter that. But today, I'm very happy seeing that all my grandson, myself, and my children will get. Some will get today and some will.
this is the same auntie, you know, folks.
Let's go.
Thank you very much.
God bless you.
Thank you very much. Now, I played that video, folks. I played the first video and the second video because I want you to understand something. And I read some of the comments under the videos. And they were quite right. Some persons commented, look how quick you went and give these people the money, the grant that they didn't get. And today, there are hundreds, thousands of people from a particular area. I remember they were protesting over the river. And it's Port Drawing, I think, where they were bypassed. They didn't collect their COVID cash grant. They didn't collect it. They didn't get it. They are still asking, what about it? They are still holding pink slips. These two aunties make some noise. And I'm happy they got their money. But what about all the others? Who your friends and cronies bypassed with the corruption on the ground and didn't give them their COVID grant? Mark Goring said Linden still waiting for the flood relief. Yesterday, Yesterday, we heard from the MP from region number 5. I said a number of villages there, they're being bypassed for this flood relief. Folks, I wish I could continue on this, but we don't want to run out the time today without having our discussion on the economics. What is happening, folks? What is happening on the economic front? Right? What is happening there? Let's get into our economic report and our discussion. Welcome in this evening an economist and advisor to the Office of the Opposition Leader, Mr. Elson. No, Elson, welcome this evening, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Thank you very much, Elson. I know our viewers look forward to hearing from you on a Friday evening. Let's jump right in, Elson. Cost of living, first of all.
Yeah.
Cost of living, as we said before on the program, the crime is on the increase, and apparently the cost of living, say, hold my drink. I need to go up too. Don't leave me out. The cost of living has decided that it wants to go to the sky. And we saw a report recently that says that the cost of living in Guyana has gone up by 14%. Let's see if we can bring this up. Yes. Talk us through this, Elson. What is really happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's from the Bureau of Statistics. I believe they would have compiled that information, and it is data that we were looking at for some time because a lot of economists suspected that something like this was going on. And you heard a lot of people crying out in the streets that the price of this is up, the price of that is up. Yeah. And that is the case. But, a 14% increase in the cost of food products is a very substantial increase. And over 4 to 5% increase in the general cost of living. These are very substantial amounts. Even if you have high inflation for a year, it would never reach these kinds of levels. Yeah. And so what we're experiencing is really extraordinary. And it has been making life really difficult for the average Guyanese. If you think about, as an example, public servants who haven't received any kind of an increase, that means that they now have the same amount of money and they're purchasing 14% less, right? Because you have this 14% increase. It means that they can only get, 14% less of goods. They can get substantially less goods for the same money that they're being paid. So people's quality of life, the average Guyanese, especially poor Guyanese quality of life, would fall substantially. And it's important to understand that when prices go up like this, it is the poor who feel it the most because they are the ones who can't invest their money, maybe living day to day. They don't have a lot of extra money to invest. Those are the people who really are suffering because they have to pay these costs and they can't find, investment income to make up for the increases. So what has been going on is over the course of the last year with the pandemic, poor people especially have been under substantial pressure. And as I've related to on previous shows, we have not seen a substantial, robust response to try and help out those that are in need, something which you've seen in many other countries. We saw an increase in the unemployment that came up from the Bank of Guyana statistics. I have expressed previously that we could have provided support to businesses to try and keep some of their employees in, especially in the entertainment industry and in restaurants and in tourism. However, we did not do that. So as a result, we had an increase in unemployment. We've had an increase in cost of living for so many people. And it's just caused people's standard of living to fall. It's sad to see that we have a lot of people out there suffering because they're not getting relief, And as far as the causes of this, we've talked about the pandemic. We've also talked about the flood. I'm glad to see some flood relief going out there. But if that flood relief goes out in an uneven way, where, some people are alleging that only people who know X, Y, and Z person are getting flood relief and certain villages are being bypassed, that means that a lot of people will still be suffering without getting the relief that they're due to get. And of course, you have to ask what is happening to this money that's not being shared out. Where is it? And we have to look at how much is being shared out. And we're looking for audits, so all of these things. to see where this money has gone. We've been calling out for audits of the COVID-19 cash grant. We haven't heard anything from regarding that. That's a very interesting question to ask. Why are we not hearing anything about that?
Yeah.
But yes, that is essentially what is going on, and it's really putting a lot of pressure on the average Guyanese, and it's really concerning. Another area that I think is important, and we don't speak enough about, a young man actually mentioned it on his Facebook that I was looking at. Mentioned, the cost of living for apartments and for houses and so on is tremendously high. And then when you do get a place that's affordable, it's out of town. The commute is difficult because it's there's a lot of traffic. So you're talking about maybe a half hour. The person was expressing, and at the same time, you got to pay these higher rents. So that is another area that has not been addressed at all, that we will have to address, because what it's going to do is it's going to make life harder rather than easier for the average Guyanese as we come into all of this oil wealth. And I don't think that is what anybody had in mind. One of the reasons that we anticipate that this will be more and more of a problem is actually related to the oil and gas industry itself.
Yeah.
And that is that in that industry, you'll have high wages. It's a very productive industry. So you'll have good wages. A lot of foreign people as well will be here. And they will obviously need places to stay. So they're going to take up a lot of the existing houses and apartments, and they're going to pay a higher amount of rent for those same places. And that is going to now raise the rents across the country, because we'll have shortages of housing. And so people with lower income will be pushed out of the city, pushed into neighborhoods that are not the best, or maybe not even the safest, because we have housing shortages. That is something that we are looking at, and we will present plans to address these types of housing shortages within the context of the oil and gas, of the new oil and gas economy. But unless it is dealt with head on, we're going to see Guyanese squeezed and squeezed and squeezed as the oil and gas sector becomes more and more a big part of the economic activity that is happening in our country. So we need to be aware of the dynamics of our growing and changing economy, and we need to be attentive to citizens' concerns regarding that, so that we ensure that the benefits of this oil and gas industry do not only accrue to the few who are well positioned and who perhaps already have finances, but benefit the population more broadly and benefit the economy as a whole.
For that, Elson, I want to let me just think I started hearing the echo. Yeah, let me just go to something that a number of persons have commented on. And I want your take on what is happening with GUYSUCO. Before we go to, because I want to talk about the Chamber of Commerce comments on this infrastructure work being given to foreign companies, but we'll go to that as we are on the government side down and cost of living. We see this spending, this continued spending on GUYSUCO, right? Billions of dollars, right? We have, the last we saw from the supplementary budget in June was $1.5 billion. We saw $2 billion in February, $4 billion in December of 2020, $5 billion. These are lots of money that are going to GUYSUCO, and we all know the smallest of Guyanese, the youngest of Guyanese will tell you that sugar is not a profitable venture. How do we get out of this? What sort of measure? How do we sell this to the Guyanese people first of all, and what do you think should be done? Because I know the AP and UFC would have tried to right size the industry and then do something so that we're not wasting so much money. Your thoughts on the spending of GUYSUCO?
Yeah, it's deeply concerning, and it seems to be a perpetual something that we are seeing perpetually. What I'd say is there are two key points I want to bring up. As much as we're seeing a lot of spending now, I think people do not yet appreciate that this spending is going to go up and go up substantially. One of the reasons for that is that as the oil and gas sector of the economy grows, that more productive, higher wage sector of the economy is going to start to attract workers away from places like GUYSUCO because they can be paid more. Which means that GUYSUCO now is going to have to offer higher wages if it wants to maintain the same level of production. That means because the production is not profitable, that we're going to have to give more and more to GUYSUCO in order for it to maintain the same level of production, right? And so as a result of that, we're going to end up paying more and more to GUYSUCO as the economy grows. I'll give you another example to kind of back this up. People don't quite appreciate that Norway, which is an oil and gas producer, actually has the highest agricultural subsidies in the whole of Europe. And Europe is a place where they have substantial agricultural subsidies in places like France. Norway has the highest agricultural subsidies in the entirety of Europe because they have a productive oil and gas sector, and agriculture, in order to keep it going, requires some subsidization. It's not as productive, the wages are not as high. So if you want to keep people in the industry, you have to subsidize the industry. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves is GUYSUCO what we really want to subsidize? Is that really what we want to be doing? I would imagine that we want to ensure that industries like our rice industries, like our greens, our local vegetables, and so on, those industries are maintained because those are important for food security. But an already non-profitable industry that we're going to have to pay more and more for as time goes on is not at all the direction that we need to go. Now, attempts were made to right-size the industry previously under the coalition, and all of that will have to be reviewed towards a more fitting GUYSUCO policy. But I do think that whatever measures that can be taken to improve productivity and efficiency in GUYSUCO to get it to be profitable, those are the measures that need to happen. And I would also say that this is something that is important for those who work in GUYSUCO to consider. In this economy, wages will grow the most and the highest in the oil and gas sector. That's the most productive sector of the economy. That's one of the key ones that will grow the most. Do you really want to be involved in cutting cane from now until the end of time when there are other areas of the economy that you can have higher wage? Do you realize that you're actually losing money by remaining married to GUYSUCO in that way? Over the course of several years, your wage will actually be lower. And I may be incorrect, but as far as I know, cutting cane has never been described as the most pleasant of occupations. So it's something that people will have to take more seriously going forward, especially GUYSUCO workers and especially the government as when we are back in power, we'll have to consider how we fund this particular institution. But the point being that as unwieldy as GUYSUCO is now, it's going to get more and more unwieldy because of the changes to the Guyanese economy. And so if you're not going to plan accordingly, this thing is going to get really out of hand and we're going to be spending huge sums on it for a prolonged period of time. If we're going to be spending huge sums on agriculture, it must be a deliberate choice in furtherance of things like food security. We don't want to end up like Venezuela where they're importing the majority of their food from Mexico, one from Guyana, and so on. I completely agree with that. But that is things like rice. That is things like green vegetables. That is not necessarily sugar. And so that is a serious consideration. And so that is something we will be reviewing, and we will put forward a fresh policy regarding that will build on what we've done before, because this cannot be allowed to go on. However, I believe that it is the PPP's intention to allow it to go on because they see it as a vote farm for the PPP. However, we will make it abundantly clear to GUYSUCO workers that what is going on is that they were losing out in terms of wages by remaining married to an industry that will never be profitable. We heard that there was a turnaround plan, that the turnaround plan was working. And all of a sudden we're hearing they need another 1.6 billion. What happened to this turnaround plan? I thought that they were making some progress, but this doesn't look like progress to me. What is this? This is a huge sum of money again. So I think that we have to move away and not be naive about GUYSUCO. and recognize the real long-term costs of continuing with GUYSUCO in its current form. And if we do that, I think we'll be able to really move the economy forward. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be producing sugar at all. In fact, I think that some of our downstream products like rum are some of our prime Guyanese assets. However, we need to be producing in a more efficient way because the current way of production makes no sense and hasn't made sense for about 20 years.
And we failed to move the industry forward, and I think that's our problem. I think what Jack had said is that it didn't make financial sense, but it made economic sense in that the livelihood of those people who are engaged in this sector are at stake.
Randolph, I want to come to that. I want to come to that quickly and directly.
Go ahead.
Right? It is important to understand that cutting sugarcane is not the only job that these people can do. Right? There's other things that they can do. We know that there will be substantial there will be substantial growth in the oil and gas industry, which will call for a lot of workers. It seems to me to be very obvious that these people need to be retrained and so on so they can get higher wages in other sectors of the economy. That is very obvious. To perpetuate this idea that they have no other way of getting an income, I think is highly suspect. You look at a place like Berbice. As far as I understand it, a lot of the oil and gas finds are off of Berbice. We are going to see some various oil and gas activities in that area, as well as on the East Coast. It seems to me that this is the way to go, and to perpetuate this, I want to say, problematic narrative that that we must keep these things going. I think I fail to see the logic in it at all.
Well, it's the PPP logic. It's the PPP as progress under the PPP apparently. And as we look to all the various sectors, we see the shambolic nature of their quote unquote progress. But let's move on. We saw an article that I want us to talk about quickly, and then we'll end off with this idea of the APNU's approach to macroeconomics and the PPP's approach. But let me see if I can share this particular one with you. All right, so let me see if I get it here quickly, because I want us to talk about the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of good. I think our viewers will be seeing it now, right? The Chamber of Commerce said that in a statement, right, that the government collaborating with several private sector and civil society organizations, right, are locked in discussion over the draft local content policy, and this has to do with local content. The headline says the Chamber of Commerce concerned about the volume of infrastructure work going to foreign companies. Recently on a program, former Minister of Public Infrastructure Annette Ferguson spoke about the St. Rose's High School that went to a Chinese company. And of course, as you know, the oil and gas sector is something that is new to us. So we will see an influx of foreign companies. But how do we manage this? How do we manage to, because, I listen to some of our viewers, and we can't come on these programs and just argue and fret and complain. We must be able to table some sort of sensible solution. And I like how you articulated what needs to be done with sugar, because we need to offer solutions. We need to figure out, how do we manage something like this? What are your thoughts on this local content? And of course, we see other infrastructure projects, not just oil and gas, but infrastructure projects being given to companies outside of Guyana.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first distinction I think that needs to be drawn is there's a difference between companies that come from the CARICOM region and companies that come from outside of CARICOM. Obviously, we have this single market and economy, and we can anticipate that companies from our neighbors will want to set up shop and be involved. That is something to be dealt with on one hand. On the other hand, you have companies that are from outside of the region. Now, unless these companies have some specific skill sets, etc., I would expect and want our local content policy to be much more stringent regarding those companies. But I think that our particular focus is not necessarily to lock companies out of Guyana, but to ensure knowledge transfer and the employment of Guyanese at various levels of these companies. Right? Because ultimately what we want is to ensure that Guyanese are fully participating in these economic activities and are getting the wages that they should get and learning about the oil and gas sector so that we can move forward. We can't just slam the door and say no foreign companies. We need to ensure that we work along with them to gain the benefits of their knowledge so that we can expand our own companies and build. And if you look at the way that Norway approached its oil and gas sector, Norway took it slow and learned, and then eventually was able to establish itself with companies like Equinor, which is the largest company in Norway and is their oil and gas producer. So that is the way to approach that more generally. However, we do need to ensure that, as far as companies outside of the CARICOM region, we put in place, some stipulations, especially regarding training Guyanese. Now, as far as companies that are within the CARICOM region goes, I think it's important to understand that as we are a part of a single market and economy, we have to engage with companies that are part of the single market and economy. But this is a two-way street. And it is important for us as a country to work along with our CARICOM partners to address concerns around things like protectionism. There are persistent concerns about Guyanese products being discriminated against, about Guyanese products being subject to particularly harsh regulations, especially agricultural products and so on, that causes us not to be able to sell these products in other CARICOM countries. And we need to ensure that we engage in discussions with our CARICOM partners such that they're fully aware that we want to ensure that trade is as free as possible. We are moving in this country in a direction of agro-processing, which is vital if we're to avoid Dutch disease. But there's no point in us processing agricultural goods to serve such a small population when we have the entire Caribbean available to us to export these goods. We cannot export these goods if we are faced by allegations of unfair practices and protectionism. So wherever we can reduce those barriers and ensure compliance with the CARICOM free trade agreements, that is what we must do. And I think that now that we're seeing investment by other CARICOM nations as countries in Guyana, it is a good time to bring up these sorts of complaints and to work with our partners to reduce these barriers so that the CARICOM region as a whole can benefit and all of our economies can benefit. This is not a one-way street, it is a two-way street. We are not just going to allow through the CSME companies from other CARICOM countries to come in and benefit from Guyana's oil and gas without us also being able to benefit from exporting our products to other CARICOM countries. And it is important to note that as Guyana has such vast agricultural potential, we will be able to export products that many CARICOM countries can barely produce. There's one typical thing you hear is that vegetables cost a lot in the islands, etc., because they don't have the land space for that and so on. We should be exporting our vegetable products, agro products, regularly to these countries. And so what I would say is, it is not that we need to shut out our CARICOM partners from our entire local economy, but we need to ensure that this playing field is always level and that in other CARICOM countries, we're able to make substantial progress. There's one of the things that has been brought up historically is Trinidad and Tobago has a very strict policy regarding honey, right? The exportation to Trinidad of honey because they have a honey industry. These are things that, these types of industries will have to be discussed because, of course, it would make many Guyanese uncomfortable for Guyanese not to be able to export freely to Trinidad in all areas whereas Trinidadian companies can come here and benefit from the growth in our oil and gas sector. I think it is only reasonable, and I think that the Trinidadians would agree that it is only reasonable that we have a fair playing field. So I think that we have to put forward a robust local content policy looking at the different players, but it does require us to now look at it more broadly and to start to engage in negotiations.
Yeah. I want to say this because we need to have a more in-depth conversation about CARICOM and economic issues on another program, because there are many ticklish and touchy things there. I, for one, believe that some of these CARICOM territories are very, very insular, and we seem to be taking products from anybody, anywhere, anyhow. As I see the amount of foreign products that are on our shelves that are putting local producers under pressure. So that's another conversation for another day. I want to wrap up our conversation today by looking at an article that appeared in the Guyanese Stabroek News. I want to look at this article because it's very interesting, and it speaks to economic policies and fiscal policies of the two administrations, right? It says here the AP and UFC budget had a higher taxation, right? And cast a wider net. The private sector bodies, not all private sector businesses, opposed these taxation. To note that not all of them oppose the taxation, right? Tax cut to pro businesses, concession results in redistribution. The AP and UFC was redistributing from the top income earners to the middle and lower earners, low and middle income earners, particularly, right, for paying for the growing civil service, right? And it continues. They continue. On the other hand, the PPP cut business taxation, including providing generous incentive, thereby increasing the income shares of the already well-off, and in the process, most likely furthering income inequality, right? And this is from Dr. Kemraj, his post in the Stabroek News on September the 5th, 2021. Elson, your thoughts on this? Your thoughts on this as we wrap up?
Yes, well, I think that taxation policy is something that we have to look at and review going forward, because it is important again to understand that we're looking at a new Guyanese economy. We're looking at an oil and gas Guyanese economy, and that is a very different animal. I think that unfortunately, historically, the PPP has been very friendly, or rather, let me say too friendly to business interests. You see that reflected in their COVID-19 policy, which has been abysmal. But at the same time, we have to look at where we see productivity from tax cuts and that sort of thing, and we have to address where we want to see it. I think we shouldn't just be friendly for the sake of being friendly. Everything we do must be thoughtful, and every policy that we focus on must generate certain outcomes. I have expressed previously, and I will continue to advocate that Guyana needs larger corporations with higher degrees of productivity and an export sector to match that accordingly. And that will require adjustments going forward. I don't think that cutting taxes across the board is necessarily the way to go. Indeed, because we want to ensure that income inequality does not get out of hand. But I do think that we need to focus on the areas that we want to grow going forward. So what I would say is, I think unfortunately what's gone on with the PPP is because they're so close to the business community, and because there are many ties that are corrupt, we're seeing, policies that are much too friendly, and as we look at the COVID-19 policy, that gives you an indication, because all realistic analysis of the health situation would show that we have needed at least one, maybe two various lockdowns over the course of the past few months to contain the spread of Delta. But we have not done anything of the sort, rather loosening restrictions, which shows that it seems to me there is too much business influence in what's going on. If you look at what's going on right now, if you look at the curve, we should anticipate, based off of other countries' experiences, another 3 to 4 weeks before this pandemic peaks. But that is, a lot of death and a lot of pain, and the question must be asked why it is that the PPP has not considered any lockdowns or even substantially increasing restrictions during a period of great stress. Now, the reason to do these things is to ensure that our healthcare workers are not overwhelmed. But when you look at the number of new people that are being infected in every day and the number of deaths, you can easily see that our healthcare system is being pushed to its furthest limit. That is what we were supposed to be trying to avoid all along. And so that is why we need a lockdown, and that is why we need to get some stimulus into the economy to help to support Guyanese. I'm not saying it needs to be permanent, but I think it's very understandable that something temporary should happen. But as a result of them having such close business ties, we're not seeing that. And we have to ask whether that is the type of governance that we want, where public policy seems to be in the back pocket of business elites who prefer to make money rather than save lives.
And we touched on that issue earlier in the program, whether or not the Delta variant is here, what the government is doing in conjunction with their vaccination efforts, whether or not they will restrict movements of Guyanese people. And I am of the belief that this will not be done because of those competing business interests that they have. As we conclude, let's conclude on this idea of income equality, and I'll take some final comments from you. This income equality, I will say, and I continue to say, is linked, whether directly or indirectly, to crime. When the society is set up in such a way where the few have everything and they have a large majority of people who have nothing, you're setting yourself up, you're setting the foundation for criminal behavior, because people will feel the only way that they can get is if they take it. And so, this, we see the business interests of the PPP. We see, and just for sake, we saw the removal of those import tax for the businesses recently, and then we don't see a reduction in the prices, but we see an increase of 14%. Whether or not this study was before then, we are still waiting to see whether or not that benefit will be passed down to the customers and to the consumers. That being said, with all that we know about this administration, how do we move forward as Guyanese? How does the average Guyanese take what is happening and make sense of it? And we'll take that as our closing comment. Your thoughts on making sense, and how do we survive and navigate this tumultuous terrain that we have to navigate in terms of our cost of living and this growing income equality that we're seeing in the country?
Yeah, it's definitely an issue. I think crime, as you've mentioned previously, is really getting out of hand. These guys on the motorbikes are I think, terrorizing the country, at large. And it seems to me that, obvious to me that the police, if they see two people on a motorcycle, especially two men, should probably, start to stop people and inquire, because it seems that is the mode of operation, almost all of these things. But in any case, on a broader level, I think that the core of much of what I tried to communicate today is that this period of change requires planning, requires thoughtfulness in order for us to move forward in a way that is productive. I have personally looked at the entire history of Norway, the entire history of Venezuela, the entire history of Trinidad, the entire history of Equatorial Guinea to prepare for this new era and to identify missteps. And one of the things I would say is we cannot allow a level of inequality which creates crime and gangs, much in the way that you see gangs and so on in other parts of the Caribbean. You know, we need to take steps to address that. We've spoken about housing. That is one factor of cost of living. We've spoken about daily the food that people eat daily going through the roof, the prices, and all these things combine to create desperation. But what is also something that we need to worry about is whether the average Guyanese is getting access to these oil and gas jobs. Because if they're not getting access to these jobs, then you can very much see how we're going to see an increase in crime, because it'll be foreign folks who are getting the jobs and not local people. Which is why I again stress that we must emphasize training wherever possible. That when these shore bases are developed, we must ensure Guyanese are prepared to be employed there, so that we have a relief from these types of strains and people do not feel the need to engage in criminal activity. Now, you'll always have people who want to engage in criminal activity, and we'll deal with that the way that we should deal with that. But if we are not aware of how our economy is changing, of the challenges that will be raised by these changes, we will actually see people's standard of living drop rather than improve. And when you combine this with the historic corruption of the PPP, you can see how bad this could get. I'll leave you with one interesting fact. Equatorial Guinea, after they found oil, actually saw a deterioration, actually saw a fall, actually saw less, actually saw standards of living in the country go down after they received oil. And so if you do not manage this correctly, if you're not aware of the challenges, then that is what you're going to see. So we need to pull together and do our research and come up with policies that will address these things. And that is the research that I've been doing at the Office of the Leader of the Opposition, that I will continue to do, and that I can assure Guyanese, so long as I remain in my post, will be a big part of the coalition's plans going forward. Because we will not sit by and allow Guyanese to not benefit from the oil and gas sector and to suffer as a result of changes that are not being addressed. That is something that we will take seriously and ensure that each and every Guyanese benefits wholeheartedly from this change. So that is the message that I want to leave Guyanese with, and I want Guyanese to take seriously. How is your country changing, and what is being done to actually deal with these changes?
Thank you very much, Elson. No, let me pay you a compliment. Colleen Roberts from YouTube is saying, I like all of your programs, but especially appreciate the Friday program. Of course, so we have this conversation on the economics of Guyana. Thank you very much, Elson, the law economist and advisor to the leader of the opposition, for bringing insight and helping us unpack what is happening in our country with respect to economics. Thank you very much, as usual, for your insight. Right.
Thank you, and good evening.
Right. Great, folks. That was our economic segment, folks. As we end our program this evening, we thank you. We're always willing to bring you information, keep you informed, help you unpack the issues of the day and how they affect you. My name is Randolph Critchlow. Of course, we encourage you to join us again on Tuesday and Friday. Sunday, we'll be on Channel 9. We'll be doing a Nation Watch program there. So we'll be there. Hopefully, we'll be able to bring it to you on APN UFC TV. Yes, we were happy to have Mr. Elson Lowe as we unpack all of the issues as it relates to economics. Folks, I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening. Remember, COVID is real. COVID is here, right? And of course, the Ministry of Health don't seem to want to tell us that Delta is here. We need to take care of ourselves. If you have enough information and you feel comfortable, go get vaccinated. Go get vaccinated, right? Do the things you need to do to protect yourselves and your family, and let's continue to work together, folks. As I always say, let's continue to work together for national development. My name is Randolph Critchlow. We want to say thank you very much for being a part. Stay tuned for 8 p.m. this evening. We will join Sherry Duncan in the ring. Do enjoy.
One time for the bass, all right. Back in the day we used to live Charlotte Street. Just learn to walk and speak. Me woulda grab a bucket, 2 stick of milk in and gone in the yard and beat. Miss Paul used to suck up she teeth. We didn't kick as the music sweet. You could hear me little voice in Regent Street, but I'm still in the game. On the stage I'm keeping the flame. Used to jump with Leon and Shane. We used to make enough noise in the neighborhood. Get vexed and call over Dwayne. Tell them music running me vein. Yesterday